Hi, good day. Welcome to our lesson today. We're going to talk about the eye, the human eye. So firstly, have you ever wondered what your eye looks like on the inside? Well, you're going to learn all about that today. You will be astounded at how wonderful our eyes are really and what is going on inside your head. So let's just recap where we are with the human nervous system. We've done reasons for the nervous system, we've done the central nervous system, we've finished with the peripheral and the autonomic nervous system, we've done nerve cells, we've done the reflex arc, we've done illnesses, and today we will be looking at the eye. Now the eye can be broken down into 5 pieces. The first part is the structure, that's what we're going to look at first. The accommodation, pupillary mechanism, binocular vision, and disorders. Right, but before we can get there, we need to know some keywords. The first one is convex. Convex means curved or rounded outwards. So let me show you with my hands what that means. Right, if my hand is a lens, right, it's curved to the outside. This is the outside, right? It's convex. If I put my other hand there, then it's biconvex. Because there is 2. Bi is 2. Now concave is the opposite. Concave will curve inwards, right? So that will be a concave outer surface. And if we put another lens there, it will be biconcave. Now you need to know these terms when we talk about the disorders of the eye and your glasses, type of glasses that you are wearing, right? Next, so I spoke about concave, curves inwards. The next term that you need to know is photoreceptors. Now, photo refers to light, right, light. And these are specialized receptors in your eye that receives the stimulus of light, like I said, and it converts it to an impulse. Remember, not a message. Within the human nervous system, there's no messages. It's only impulses. And then the last one that we can talk about quite a lot is refraction. Refraction is the bending of light, right? But we like to be fancy in sciences, so we say refraction. So that's a term that you need to know. Right, but let's look at the structure that you actually know, that you can see in the mirror. And that is the external structure of the eye. Right. So now you see your eyebrows here. The function of the eyebrows is to keep the sweat out of your eye. So don't shave it off, you need it. Another part of your eye is the eyelid and your eyelashes. That's also for protection. If something comes flying towards your eye, you can blink quickly, and these muscles are so fast that you blink before you even realize it, and you can fend this mosquito off, right? So that's what the eyelashes also does. They catch dust particles and insects that wants to go into your eye. This black part here is the pupil. Now that is actually a hole in your eye, but we will talk about that a bit later. The white part of your eye is the sclera, and then the colored part of your eye, whether you have brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes, that is the iris. Right, so that's the part you can actually see. And then the eye is within the orbit of your skull, right, the eye socket, the orbit. But now let's look at the internal structure of the eye. You really need to know this, right? They love asking this in the exams. Firstly, you've got an outer layer. Yeah, you can see the sclera. That's the white part here. Can you see it's all the way around, the white part? That's the sclera. Then you have a muscle here, there and there. We call that the ciliary muscle or body. Right, they accept both, but we prefer the word muscle, ciliary muscle. On this ciliary muscle are suspensory ligaments there, and they are attached to this transparent disc here, which we call your lens, the eye lens, right, the lens. And you can see at the bottom is also suspensory ligaments and the ciliary muscles. Right, the cornea is this bubble part that's in front of your eye, right? It's like a little bubble in front of your eye. The colored part, like I said, is the iris there. The hole there in your eye is the pupil. And then this chamber here, between the iris and the cornea, is filled with a liquid. And that liquid, you must know the name, is aqueous humor. Aqueous humor. Now at the back of the eye, this part of the eye, you will get a chamber, and it's filled with vitreous humor. It's also like a jelly-like fluid almost. And well, I will get into the detail of that a bit later. And we have a membrane here. So just below the sclera, we've got this a membrane here. It's the choroid, right? It's colored, it's dark, it's red, right? And on the inside of the eye, you've got a membrane all around. And this membrane is very important, the retina. Retina contains all these photoreceptors, so that you can see. Then you have a little yellow spot there. We can call it the yellow spot, or the scientific name is the macula lutea, right? And the optic nerve that leaves the eye and goes to the brain, or the cerebrum. And then the blind spot that's caused by this optic nerve. But let's go into more detail. Right, the first part, like I said, the white part of your eye, that is the sclera. You can see clearly on that picture, the sclera. And it's tough and it's non-elastic, which means it cannot stretch. It supports and protects the eye. So that's for the eyeball to protect it. And it provides attachments for the muscles. There are 6 muscles that's attaching to the eye so that your eyeball can move around and look around. All right, and they attach to the sclera. The next one is the cornea. Can you see that bubble there over the eye there? That bubble is the cornea, and it's transparent. Right, it's a bulge over the pupil. It focuses light or breaks. Remember, we said blending of light is refraction onto retina. And most of the refraction happens here. That's something some people don't know, that actually, yes, our lens is doing a lot of the refraction, but the cornea, this bubble part, yeah, actually does most of the light refraction. Next part, the conjunctiva, that is a part that covers your eye, but it also folds in here into your eyelid. Can you see there? Right. It protects your eye. It's like a little membrane there. It's loose connective tissue, and it covers it, and it's for protection. And I don't know if you went to the doctor, if you had eye infection, they would tell you you've got conjunctivitis, and that's because this little layer here is infected on your eye. And that's when you get conjunctivitis, and they usually give you antibiotics to put in your eye and so that it can be better. I put the iris and the pupil together on this slide because they work together. You need to know this when we get to that part of the content. So the iris, like I said, is the colored part, that circle part of the eye. Right, this part here, the colored part. And these are actually beautiful photos. They're taken very closely so you can see some of the muscles there of the iris. Right, and the iris has a very important function. It controls the amount of light entering the pupil. That's the one that's controlling the amount of light going in there. The pupil is the black hole in the iris. And the size of this pupil is controlled by the iris, right? This pupil cannot contract or whatever because it's a hole. It's just a hole. The iris here, the muscles here, will determine how big the pupil is. Now, when the pupil is big or wide, we call it dilate, and when it's small, we call it constrict. Right, and that's the only place where light can enter the eye. It cannot enter here. It can only enter through that hole there. Right, the lens. This is a flexible disc of transparent cells. It's transparent, and like you can see, it's a convex lens, right, curving outwards. And this is a micrograph of the lens, and you can see that there's this little fibers here, there. That is the suspensory ligaments, right, and they are all connected or attached to the ciliary muscles. The ciliary muscles, right, and those two work together. They work together, right? And they can increase and decrease the tension on the lens. And by doing that, they can change the shape of the lens, right? And also another important thing to remember is that the lens will form an upside down image of the object. So if you can look at this, this is the bottom part of the flower, and then it goes all the way there. And this is the top part of the flower, it all goes away there. Can you see that's why the image is upside down? Right, so the refraction of light here causes the image to be upside down on your retina. Aqueous humor, like I said, that fluid in here between the cornea and your irises. And this is a very clear watery fluid, and it provides the lens and cornea with nutrients, right? And it's made up mostly of water, but it also contains sugars, vitamins, and proteins. Right, let's move on. Choroid. Choroid is the vascular layer, that dark layer inside the eye. And vascular means a lot of blood vessels, right? So it will provide nutrients and oxygens through the blood to the eye and the retina. It maintains the temperature and the volume of the eye. And very important, what I always like to ask is, why is it so dark? Because that dark melanin pigment in the choroid absorbs the light, so that you don't have reflection in your eye. You either don't look like a disco ball inside, right? There's just an image forming, no scattering of light rays and so on, and you can't see. Vitreous humor, remember that's a jelly-like layer or liquid inside this eyeball, right? It maintains the shape of the eye. It absorbs shock, because if you get a bump against the eye won't fold in because there's a jelly layer here protecting it and absorbing the shock, and it keeps the retina properly connected to the back of the wall. I just want to share the secret. When you get older, it's not very nice. Some people, that jelly layer, that vitreous humor, starts to decrease in size, and it pulls away this retina from the wall, and then you start seeing flashes in your eye. So if you have a parent or a grandparent that's seeing flashes, tell them to go to the doctor immediately, because your retina is busy going away from the wall and you'll be blind. Another thing that happens is this jelly layer basically gets little holes in it, and that little holes causes, like you can see in your image, spider webs in front of you, or little black dots floating all over the show. It's not very nice getting old, I must tell you. Right, but let's move on. Retina. That's the internal membrane of the eye, and that's a very important membrane because it contains the light receptive cells. That's the reason why we can see. Firstly, we have cones for color. You see the C there and the C, cones for color. And rods is for seeing in dim light, grays and blacks. And when you're in a dark room, you can make out forms. So the rods will do that part, right? But cones are for color. And it converts this light stimulus to electrical impulse. Remember, stimulus converted to an impulse. No messages here. And look at this nice micrograph of rods and cones. You can see this long rod-like things. They are the rods. And then the short fat things here, the roundish things, those are the cones. Right, so cones for color, rods for black and gray and dark places. Yellow spot, or the macular lutea. Now that is the yellowish area on the retina. And usually when you look at an image, you can draw a straight line through the pupil to the, oh, that's not a very nice straight line I drew there, but to the yellow spot there. Right, and in the middle, this is what it looks like, is an indentation in the retina. And right here in the middle there is a center, what we call the Fovea Centralis. It's in the center, Centralis, right? And that is where the most cones are found. They are tightly packed. So this is where the sharpest vision is in the yellow spot, there in the middle at the Fovea Centralis. You will see the most accurate vision. Right, the optic nerve. This transmits electrical impulses from the retina to the cerebrum. You can't say brain, you have to say cerebrum, right? Remember, the cerebrum will interpret the information. It creates a blind spot because there where it leaves the eye, there on the inside, there will be no rods or cones, right? So you won't be able to see anything there, no image will form there. And remember to say cerebrum takes this, remember I said it was an upside down image. Now what it does is it's interpreting the information and then it turns it upright again so that you can see things upright and not upside down. Right, so that's the optic nerve, transmitting the impulses towards the brain. And that is the end of this section. We're going to go and take a short break, and after the break, I will be seeing you again. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your little break, and we're going to continue now with the eye. Let's just see where we are with the human nervous system first. So like I said, we are busy now. We have done all of these concepts here, right? We are busy with the eye. And if we go even further into the eye, we have done the structure of the eye. We are going to go to accommodation now. Right, so let's continue. Firstly, we need to know some keywords. Accommodation, right, that's the ability of the lens to change shape of the lens to focus on a near or distant object, right. Very important, because remember, you can't just see something here. You can see all the way there, close by. If you could only see it one place, that would be horrible. You had to go and walk there and, you know, see what's going on. So that's why your lens can actually change shape, and that can determine where you look. That's determined by where you look. If you look far and where you look near. Right, so once again, convex. Remember, I told you convex will always be curved outside. Let me just put down the pen. Curved outside, and concave will always be curving inside. Right, so just remember those two concepts there. Right, so let's move on. Right, now what is accommodation? It's the focusing of light on the retina. And that focusing is all to do with the lens. Right, now mammals, that's now us. Focus by changing the shape of the lens. Right, the lens is less convex for distant objects and more convex for near objects. And if you look at this picture here, you can see how this lens is flatter, then rounder, flatter, then rounder. And this happens all the time while you're looking around. You don't even realize that this is happening. But let's look at it more detail. So, the refractive power of lenses, that is to do with the bending of light. Right, like I said, we don't talk about bending of light, we talk about refraction of light, right. So if a lens, if you look at these three lenses, you'll see this one is very flat, and this is more round, more convex, right, convex. And if you look at this, the more convex one, it's more round, is breaking the light or bending the light a lot. Can you see? It's bending it quite a lot. So there's a lot of refraction going on here, right. The refractive power is very strong in this lens. This one, the breaking is a bit less because this one is less round or less convex. And this flatter lens here, look how much it's refracting the light. Not a lot, eh? So it's not bending the light a lot. So the flatter the lens, the less refraction. The rounder the lens, the more refraction. That is a concept that if you understand that, accommodation will not be difficult for you. Also, when you look at a distant object, you'll see the light rays reaching your eyes don't need a lot of breaking, right? They don't need a lot of breaking or refraction, so your lens will be flatter, right? Because it's from far and the light's already sort of in the right position, so your lens is not needing to be very round, right? But now look at what happens when you have near objects. When a near object, there's the light ray going, can you see it's bending upwards? It's going outwards, right? So now you need a very round lens to bend this light more, or else, you know, it's not going to have an image there. So that is, with a near object, you need a more convex lens, and with a distant object, you need a flatter lens. Let's have a look how accommodation works. It always works with your ligament, your suspensory ligament. So in this picture, you can see that it is tight. Can you see it's very tight? So it's pulling on the lens, right? So it's making the lens less convex. Here, the ligaments relax and they are more convex. This lens is more convex because there's not a lot of tension. Small tension here, big tension here on this lens. And you need this for distant objects, and you need this for nearby objects. But let's go into more detail in the next slide. So this is what you really need to know. You can find this in Mind the Gap. Please, this is the words we are using when we are marking, and it's on the memos usually. Right, so let's start with the picture. You'll see there the ciliary muscle contracts. What happens when a muscle contracts? When a muscle contracts, it becomes bigger. Right, and when it relaxes, it becomes smaller. So if you look at this muscle here, it's big. It's pulling the sclera forward, right, because here at the bottom is also one, right. And when that happens, this tension here is released and your suspensory ligaments are now loose. And ligaments are not muscles. You cannot say a ligament is contracting or relaxing. They are like little filaments, right? Filaments. So they cannot contract on their own. The muscle must contract, right? So children are losing marks when they say the suspensory ligaments contract. Don't ever say that. They will either loosen or tighten. Right, so when they are slacking or becoming loose, there's less tension on this lens, so the lens becomes more convex. Don't say becomes convex. The lens of the eye is always convex. It just becomes more convex. Okay, so when it becomes more convex, we saw that it will refract the light more. Right, so let's have a look at what you must know. Ciliary muscles contract, remember it becomes bigger. The sclera is pulled forward. Suspensory ligaments slacken or loosen. Don't say relax, it's not a muscle. Tension on the lens decreases, it becomes more convex, right? And then the refractive power of the lens will increase and you will have a clear image on the retina. Now let's move on to what happens when an object is further than 6 meters away. Now just the opposite will happen, right? Firstly, your ciliary muscle will relax. See how small it is now. And when it's so small, it's not pulling the sclera forward anymore, so the sclera is now moving back to the normal position. But now, look, it's actually pulling now the suspensory ligaments upwards, so they tighten. They are tightening now. And when they are tightening, there's more tension on the lens. And when there's more tension on the lens becomes flatter. But we're not allowed to say flatter, we say less convex. Right. And when it's less convex, then there's less refraction. So what must you know? Firstly, the ciliary muscles relax. The sclera goes back to normal position. Suspensory ligaments become taut. Tension on the lens increases. The lens becomes less convex, right? The refractive power will decrease. And there's a clear image on the retina. Right. So that is basically accommodation. So let's just look at a question or two. Give the letter and name of the part that contract to change the shape of the lens. Remember that would be number A, the ciliary muscle. Controls the amount of light that enters the eye. Remember it's not the pupil, it's the iris. It is projected, so it's a C, iris. They have both, ne? Letter and name. You can't just say iris. Is protected by the conjunctiva, slip of the word, D cornea, this part here, right there, D cornea. Right, and study diagram 1 and 2, what process is responsible for the change in the shape of the part E? Part E is the lens, so what part will now be responsible, or what process? The word is process, and the process is accommodation, right? Which diagram 1 or 2 represents the state of the eye when a person is reading a book? When a person is reading a book, it's close by, right? It's near. This is a flat lens, this is a round lens. So this is the one that will be used for nearby vision. So it definitely will be diagram number 2. Right. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your break and you are ready for the next section of our eye exploration. Right, so let's have a look. We are busy with the human nervous system, right? So we've done all these concepts already, right? And now we're going to move further with the eye. We're busy with the eye. So as you remember in the previous sections, we did the structure of the eye. We did accommodation of the eye, and now we're going to look at pupillary mechanism. Now, pupillary mechanism is exactly what it says. It's the pupil, right? That black hole in your eye, right? If you look at this picture here, you can see it becomes bigger and smaller, right? That is pupillary mechanism, right? And when your eyes are in bright light, your pupil will become smaller, and we call it constricting. constrict, right? And when it's in dim light, when you're in a dark room, it will dilate. Right, so it becomes bigger, right? And the iris is the one that controls the amount of light. Because remember, this is a hole. This pupil is a hole. It's not a muscle or anything like it. The iris here around it will control the amount of light going in. Let's have a look at how the iris is working. So people get confused between the lens and the pupillary mechanism. Think of the pupillary mechanism as the iris and the pupil, right? The iris is round. It is a circle. And a circle's got a radius, right? There's a radius. And it's circular. So those are the circular muscles. It's not the ciliary muscles. It's circular because it's in a circle. Just remember it that way, okay? So when we are in dim light, we need big pupils. We need dilated pupils to get more light into our eyes, right? So remember that, we need a big pupil. So what happens is the radial muscles will contract, and when they contract, they become bigger and shorter, right? They become shorter. And when they are shorter, they are pulling the inside of this iris outwards. Can you see? So then the pupil becomes bigger, right? And when it becomes bigger, it will dilate, right? So the radial muscles will contract and become short and fat. The circular muscles will relax, right? Because they are antagonistic. If the one is contracting, the other one is relaxing. The pupil dilates and the amount of light entering is increased. So that is in dim light. Let's have a look at bright light. Now think, if you're in bright light, you can't have big pupils because it's bright, it's going to blind you. So you need smaller pupil, constricted pupils, right? So now what's happening is the opposite of the previous one. Your circular muscles are now contracting. And these radial muscles are now relaxing. You can see they're becoming longer. And if they become longer, they're basically pushing the inside down. Can you see? If they push that inside down, the pupil becomes smaller. So what must you remember? You must remember the circular muscles of the iris will contract, the radial muscles will relax, the pupil will constrict because you need less light in your eye. You don't need a lot of light, so it must be constricted, and the amount of light will be reduced. Right, so if you understand this process, it will be easier to study it. So try and understand really what each one is doing and why the pupil is bigger and smaller. Let's go on. Now we found in the previous exams that learners struggle with the difference between accommodation and pupillary mechanism, right? So maybe this table is a good idea just to remember what the differences are. Firstly, you must always look at the stimulus. For accommodation, it's a change in the distance of the object from the eye, right? So is it near or far? But for pupillary mechanism, it's all about the light intensity. Parts involved with accommodation is always your lens, your suspensory ligaments, because the lens is suspended from them, and the ciliary muscle. With the pupillary mechanism, obviously the name says it all, pupil, and the pupil works with the iris, and the iris is round, so you have radius, radial muscles, and circular muscles. Main changes, obviously the shape of the lens will change here with accommodation. It becomes less and more convex, and diameter of the pupil on this side, it will become constricted or dilated. What brings about the change? The suspensory ligaments and the ciliary muscle will bring about the change here, and the radial and the circular muscles will change the pupil size. Right. So if you know this table, I think you won't get confused. Let's look at some questions in this part. Identify part A. Where's part A? There's part A. That's the outside of the eye, and that is the sclera. Right. B is, yeah, that can only be the lens, right? C, where is C? Where is C? There is C. This is the ciliary muscle, but if you said ciliary body, it will also be accepted, but we actually prefer ciliary muscle. Number 2, identify the process in diagram 1. So remember, process is usually either pupillary mechanism or accommodation, right? So either one of the two. So, in diagram 1, you've got a big pupil and now you've got a small pupil. So what is that? Pupillary mechanism. Right, next. Name the part of the eye that's responsible for the response in diagram 1. Right, what's the part of the eye that will make your pupil smaller? That must be the iris there. Right, the little muscles in the iris. State the consequence to the person's vision if the process in diagram 2 does not occur. So, here's diagram 2. We have a flat lens and now it becomes more convex. And when do we need more convex, more refraction? When something is nearby. When your book usually has to be nearby, right? Or when you look at close objects, right? So, when this can't happen, you won't be able to see clearly objects that are close to you. So it will become blurry, right? So near vision will be blurred. I hope you enjoyed this section of the eye. I think it's time for an ad break now, for a little break for you. Go and have some coffee, tea, and come back after the ad break. I'll see you there. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your little break and you are now well rested and ready for the next section of the eye. Like I said before, the eye have got 5 parts. We have done the structure now. We have done accommodation. We are finished with pupillary mechanism. We will now be looking at binocular vision as well as the disorders of the eye. Let's move on. Right, what is binocular vision? It refers to the ability to focus on an object with both eyes because you've got 2 eyes and it will create a single image, right? And the image from the left eye is usually a bit different to the image from the right eye, right? And the 2 images join them in the brain and it results in binocular vision. You can look at this diagram here. This is the eye muscles. These are muscles there. So you can see that this eye is looking from this angle and this eye is looking from that angle. So the image formed here on this eye will be different from the image forming in that eye. But what happens in your brain, in the cerebrum, the 2 will join and you will get a 3D basically image of the flower. All right, but let's have another image just to explain this phenomena a bit better. Right, if you look at this little block here, right, CBA, this is now the left eye. If the left eye look at this block, it's looking from this angle. So this is what this eye is seeing. It's seeing the C in front and the B on the side and the A on top. The right-hand side is looking at the B. It's looking from here. So it's seeing the B in front, the C there, and the A on top. Right. So what happens is this images is now combined in your brain, in your cerebrum, and you will be seeing the block in 3D. Right, so that is binocular vision, vision with 2 eyes. Right, so the 3 pairs of muscles on the outside of each eye enables the eyes to see 3D, 3-dimensionally, right? The ability to perceive depth is known as stereoscopic or stereoscopic vision, right? So we don't see things as being flat, we actually see depth. In depth, and that is 3D, 3-dimensional. So what is the significance of this? Depth perception enables us to walk up and down a stair. Right, so I challenge you to go to stairs and close your one eye and now you try to get up the stairs. You're going to struggle because you cannot now see what the depth is, that you must lift your legs to get to the step. So you're going to struggle more, right? I've got another thing that I can show you. If you take your 2, and I want you guys to do it now, fingers are very inexpensive, use your fingers, right? And I want you to look at your 2 fingers like this, and I want you now to take them and touch them, right, with the 2 tips, right? Now you close your left eye. Close your left eye, and now you try to touch these 2 See, I'm struggling. I hope you are trying it at home. Okay, now open both eyes again, and you will be able to touch your two fingers. And that is depth perception. Right, so that's why you need two eyes. Right. It also gives you a wider field of view. So when I'm looking at you and I close my left eye, I can see from here to there. But if I open my left eye, I can see all the way from here all the way there. So it's actually making my field of view much wider, right? It helps with performance skills such as catching, grasping, and locomotion. Yeah, that's the stuff I'm not good at. But if you can look at this guy now, if he didn't have depth perception, he would not be able to hit that ball with a bat, right? Because that's what you need, depth perception. And that's all that binocular vision is all about. Let's move on. Now we're going to look at the disorders of the eye. And you need to know 4 of them. There's many more, but you only need to know 4. Right, now the first one is short-sightedness. Short-sightedness, or myopia. This is a scientific word for it, but that is now the everyday name. Short-sightedness means you can only see here in front of you. You can't see there. You struggle seeing people there. Right. So the problem here is the lens cannot become less convex, or your eyeball is too long. Imagine being born with long eyeballs. Well, that is your problem if you can't see far. That's my problem. Right. So it's one of these two. The lens bends the light rays or refracts. Remember, we talk about refracts too much. And as a result, it falls in front of the retina. Look there. The image is formed here in front. It's not on the retina. It's in front of it. Yes, there is light rays still going there to the retina, but it's blurry now. Okay. And this causes the image to be blurred. Right, you can actually see it very nicely on this diagram here, where the light rays are bent in front of the retina and not on the retina. Right, like I said, there's still light rays reaching the retina, but it's going to be all blurry. So how did they decide to fix it? Our clever scientists. What they've done is they used a biconcave lens. That's what it, remember, curving inwards. And what this does is it just bends that light ray there a bit outwards. And as it bends it outwards, now this lens refractive power is good enough to bend the light rays on the retina, and you can get an image on the retina. Right. So you need a biconcave lens to fix short-sightedness. The next one is long-sightedness or hyperopia. Hyperopia is the scientific name. Long-sightedness, you can see far. You can see the people on the highway, in the buses. You can see very far. But you've got a problem here. You know, when people stand hello and tell you hello, yeah, you have problem recognizing their faces. Yeah. So this is the inability of the lens to become more convex, right? So the lens can't become rounder. Or these people are born with shorter eyeballs, right? They got short eyeballs. And the light is refracted less, and the image will fall behind the retina now. So there will be no image formed on the retina. It's harder for people to read as they age. Have you seen your father, your grandmother, or older people, you know? When they start getting older, their arms get too short because now they can't focus on the book anymore. They can't read here. They have to do this. So they complain their arms are becoming too short. Nee, that's also another bad thing of aging. So the lens, what happens with old people is the lens loses elasticities and it cannot become convex enough anymore. Right. So those ligaments are now old and tired and they don't want to work along. So what do? Can you see here? The image is formed behind the retina, but there's not actually an image forming at the back of your head. No, that's not actually happening. What's happening is this is the image here, and it's all blurry, right? Because it's not focused like that. So what did they find out would work for this? Biconvex lenses, right? Curving outward, right? And it just bends that light rays a little bit inwards, and then the lens refractive power is now enough to form an image on the retina at the back. Next. Astigmatism. Right. Astigmatism is when you see blurry lines. And you know what? I found something out when I looked at this picture. I thought I was normal, and then I looked at this picture and I thought, but this is normal. Apparently it's not. This is astigmatism. You're not supposed to see these lines when you look at lights, right? You're supposed to see this. This is normal vision and this is astigmatism. What's the cause of this? The cause is the following. Your cornea is either, okay, this is a normal one. The cornea is either too conical, it's not spherical, right? Or the surface here is irregular. So that irregular surface is now causing the bending of light in many ways. So you've got a lot of images forming there. So you don't see a A, you see an A with illusions next to it. So it's all blurry, right? So it causes blur vision. And this can be corrected with certain types of lenses. This is not within the matric syllabus, so you don't need to know which types of lenses because it's actually very complicated and we are not optometrists. Right, cataracts. Another thing that happens when you go old. Right, that's when clouding forms in the lens due to the denaturing of lens protein. So it becomes all white. And when it becomes white, light cannot go through it. Right, and like I said, because it caused by age, or those people that didn't listen to their mothers, and when the mother said don't look at the sun, they were looking at the sun. Don't ever look at the sun, you will fry your retina and you'll get cataracts when you get old. Right, and luckily today they use surgery. They suck out the lens and they replace it with a plastic lens. They can even give you biconvex lenses these days, right? So it's very nice, but in the olden days if you had cataracts you were blind. Right. Let's move on. So let's look at how they would ask this in a question paper. The table indicates the percentage of visually impaired people in the world suffering from different visual defects. Right. Which visual defect in the table is the most common? Most common means you'll see it the most. But let's look at the table. Visual defects, there's blindness, it's 2%. Long-sightedness, 64%. Short-sightedness, 30%. Other 4%. So who's the most? Obviously, long-sightedness. Right, so long-sightedness. A mistake that learners did here was they were trying to be very smart, you know. I know what long-sighted's scientific name is. It's hyperopia. And they wrote hyperopia and it wasn't awarded a mark at all because the question is saying in the table. Where is it? The table. Right, so in the table. And there's no hyperopia in the table, it's long-sightedness in the table. That's what's written there. So use the words in the table. Don't use your own words because you will lose marks. Right, in some cases where people are blind, the condition is caused by cataracts. Explain why people with cataracts may become blind. Right, so when you have a cataract, firstly, the lens will become milky, cloudy, opaque. Right, that's the cause, right? And what will be the effect of that? It will be that no light will be able to pass through. That's the second part because they were asking for explain and it's 2 marks. Right. Still on the cataracts, state one way in which cataracts can be treated. Well, there's only one way, and don't say sucking out, it is surgery. Right, it's surgery. Next, explain why long-sighted people, underline that, long-sighted people need to wear glasses with biconvex lenses as a corrective measure. So now you firstly, because it's explained, you have to say what is wrong with these long-sighted people and how will this help. Right, so let's look. The lens is less convex or the eyeball is short. Remember, these are the short eyeball people, right? This causes the light rays to fall behind the retina. Okay, so that's what this is causing. So how can the biconvex lens fix it? What it does, it increases the refractive power, and now the light rays are focused on the retina. Right, so that's the 4 possible answers, or not the possible, those are the 4 points that they were looking for. Name a visual defect that is characterized by an uneven cornea or lens. Right, and that's the one that I thought, well, I didn't know I had. That is astigmatism. Remember, that's when your cornea is irregular and or your lens, and it gives you more than one focal point. Now we came to the end of our lesson today. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope that you will go and study hard for this part, because actually it's very easy to get marks here, but you have to know your stuff, right? So you have to go and study real hard, but it's easy marks, right? So see you next time.